All right, it's a Monday morning, and even though school is out, I'm going to start off the week with a bit of a pop quiz, right? This one that no working adult, especially those nearing retirement, can afford to skip out on, much less fail. It is testing your financial literacy. Our professor for the day, Mr. Cory Sickles, the owner of Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. Good to see you, Cory.
Great to be here, Robin.
All right, so we are talking about financial literacy today, Cory, because there was a new survey, and these had some pretty eye-opening results. As I understand, people could not answer even half of the questions correctly.
Less than 50% could not get the answers correct, right? So most classes, that's not passing.
That's an F, maybe a D minus.
Yes.
But yeah, you're looking at a failure.
That's correct. And it's basic stuff like, just investing. I think a lot of people think financial literacy is nothing but investing, but there's so much more. Debt management. And if you really think about just some of the things you have to use on a daily basis.
Okay.
Just for finance, right? On how to pick an insurance company or how to go out and maybe negotiate something on a loan, things like that. That's really what we're talking about.
That's why they've long said they should teach this in high school instead of maybe, home ec or something,
right.
All these things, because these are things as we age, as we become adults, that we need to know, right?
Correct.
All right, so I know that there was one question in particular maybe that kind of stood out. What was that?
Well, I think it's one thing that I think people just really don't realize, and that's how much are you really going to spend on healthcare costs, or more importantly, how much is Medicare or some type of government agency going to pay for healthcare costs in retirement?
Yeah.
And it's really about 2/3 of the cost. And a lot of people think that if I go into a nursing home or I have all this long-term care, that it's going to be covered. And it's not, unless you really have no assets.
Okay, and that's the key, right? You have to drain your assets before you get that kind of help, which nobody wants to do.
Nobody wants to do. That's correct. That's exactly right.
And clearly, Cory, then there is a gap. There's a gap that needs bridged. So when you talk about this financial literacy, is it in just educating people that you think we can fill that gap? How do we do that?
Well, I think it's just like a lot of things. I think a lot of people have to take their own responsibility in order to be able to learn. When a client comes in and we review what they have, even from a portfolio perspective, a lot of times they don't even know what they're invested in or why they're invested into it. Or they just don't understand the products. So that's one side of it. But when you really think about on what other things you want to be educated on, your credit score, it's so important because that affects so many things on how to get a loan. Sometimes it might even affect whether you get a job or not anymore, right? So debt management, you don't want to be able to go into retirement with a lot of debt. Credit card debt especially, and that credit card debt could start in your 30s and 40s as well, right? Emergencies pop up and you don't have the money to pay for it, so now you're just building credit card debt that you can never get out of.
Yeah, right. It compounds. I mean, the interest is crazy on those to begin with. It's now upwards of 30% some cards.
Exactly right.
Okay. All right, Cory, speaking of risk, you say too, kind of knowing your financial risk is an area a lot of people struggled with, correct?
They do. And here's when we start talking about risk, I mean, we're all going to make mistakes. And hopefully you learn from that mistake. But really what we're talking about is by making that wrong mistake, how much is it going to cost me, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. Whether you're underspend or undersave for retirement, that's a huge part. Because now what you're going to find out later on in life is that maybe you can't retire at 65 because you didn't save enough in your 30s and 40s and 50s, right? So being able to understand the risk of the consequences of making a mistake and how that's really going to impact you, not only today, but later on down the line.
All right, you say people then should kind of take responsibility, educate themselves on some of these things, right, as they go into it. And so what do they do to improve that literacy? What are some ways, some places they can go, right, to reach out into that?
Yeah, the first thing I would probably do is try to schedule 10 or 15 minutes a week or a month and just try to learn something. A great tool could be Investopedia, if you have your iPhone or any type of phone you have.
Like Wikipedia for investments?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's called Investopedia. I think another one, if you don't want to read, then there's so many YouTube videos out there. You can even go to, if you type in Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, we do video shorts on different types of financial topics. So those are less than a minute. But we're going to talk about HSAs. We're going to talk about how to invest or why it's important to have a budget. There's just so many things that you can do now on what I would say on the internet in order to be able to figure that out. Always check your sources to make sure they're valid sources.
I was going to just say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of good ways for you to be able to spend, 5-10 minutes really easy. And here's the one nice part about it. Everyone's, if you're laying in bed scrolling on Instagram, as soon as you watch that first financial topic, you're going to get a lot more of them.
Yeah, the algorithm's going to shoot them all your way. So there you go. And then, if you want to sit down and talk with somebody, of course, Cory and his team would be more than willing to do that with you. 2 locations, free consultation, complimentary meeting, and there's really no risk. So you can sit down and if you want to be educated on where you're at in your investments, where you're sitting at, right?
That's exactly right. Again, all meetings are complimentary. We're here to help and guide you. And even if you, do a lot of it yourself, there's nothing wrong with getting that second opinion in order to make sure that you are going to have the retirement that you want. All
right. Yeah, you don't want to find out at 65. You got to wait till 72. So
that's exactly right.
There you go, Cory. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.